Hi everybody, I'm Greg Vadney, the director of the Rahr West Art Museum, and I want to thank the Coolest Coast and Vagabond for helping us out with another evening of live stream, and I want to thank our artist, Sonia Vasquez, who is helping us with this really, I think, interesting and important Manitowoc community portrait project. We're here at the Rahr West Art Museum in the historic Vilas Rahr Mansion. It is, of course, quiet right now. We wish that you could be here, but of course, because of community spread of COVID, our doors are closed. And we want to get open to you as soon as we safely can. But in the meantime, we're very thankful not only for our friends at Coolest Coast, but for the Art Bridges Foundation for contributing towards this project. Art Bridges has done great things for the Rahr West Art Museum to bring, especially in this time where it's difficult to have you come here in person, to bring things from the Rahr West Art Museum to you. This is a really unique and fun project. As many of you know, this year, 2020, is the 150th anniversary of the city of Manitowoc. And as the year passed along, I guess obviously so many other things happened that we kind of tended to forget the sesquicentennial. But fortunately, a few people here, certainly our curator Diana Bolander, thought what a great way to celebrate what Manitowoc is 150 years after its founding. Than to talk to the people of our community today. And that means you, Sonia, and so many of our community members, and talk to them about what it means to be from Manitowoc. The good, the bad, what are our hopes for a future in Manitowoc, and why we're here, how we see our place in the city of Manitowoc in 2020. And with that in mind, we're so fortunate to have a tremendous artist like Sonia Vasquez helping us with this community portrait. The community portrait not only includes the work that she's going to be doing tonight, but it includes your work. And I invite all of you to participate. Outside the museum, I said that we're closed. We do have a box that's available 24/7 for you to stop in and pick up the Portrait of Manitowoc project for your home. It will give you information about the project, and it will also give you one of these cards. It's just a simple card for you to do your own portrait. We're asking all members of our community, no matter what you think your art ability is, to create a self-portrait. And on the back of the card, and in many ways just as important as the portrait itself, is for you to answer this question. How do you feel about your identity in relation to Manitowoc? It's that simple, and it's in here. You can answer that question on the back of the card. And this is a keepsake for our community. Not only to document the great artistic talent of our area right now, but also who we believe we are and how we believe we fit together as a community. And we ask you to pick these up at the Rahr West. There's also some detail in how you'll return them to us, because we know for certain the Rahr West Art Museum is going to open again. And when we do, in 2021, or 2020, but in 2021, we will be exhibiting your cards, your portrait, your self-portrait of the Manitowoc community. And we'll also be sharing that with some of the great work that Sonia is doing as well. Sonia Vasquez, do you want to talk a little bit about your work, and we can talk about what we're going to see tonight?
Sure. So, should I go here? So, tonight I have my wonderful nephew who's agreed to sit for me today. His name is Keyshawn. And that's what we're going to work on with him is this one. Okay, sorry. So, I'm just going to be doing another live portrait, as I did last time, from life. And along the way, I'll kind of answer questions, any questions that you have. So please feel free to ask questions. I'm totally happy to answer anything in relation to my practice. I'm really excited about this project. I think it's really important, and I also I love that Greg had mentioned the connection between 150 years. I think Manitowoc has obviously changed quite a bit over the years, and I think having a portrait of Manitowoc in this time where we're seeing Manitowoc developing even more than I feel like maybe it ever has before, and that's just really exciting. And I think it's great to be able to show the community and represent the community for what it really is. So yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, we can get started.
We'll have you get started. For anyone who didn't see the first live stream that we did with Sonia 2 weeks ago, we'll be pretty much taking the from a blank slate on through the next hour into a pretty well-defined portrait. And along the way, I'll ask some questions. We'll talk a little bit. You can also see her as she does the work in live time. And also in live time, we would love for you to participate. So if you have any questions, we'd love for you to ask them. You can use the Facebook page, and we're very thankful once again that Coolest Coast is live streaming this event for us and helping us to do the Q&A during it. So let's make sure that we have the Q&A. If you have any comments you want to make or questions or anything like that, you make sure that you type them in and send them over to us, and we'll try to reply to them as quickly as we can. Thanks again for joining us, and again, we want to thank Arts Bridges and Coolest Coast for helping us bring this to you.
Thank you. All right. So I'm going to start off by setting a timer for our model here, because models need breaks. It is harder than it looks to sit for that long. So we're doing 20-minute intervals where Keyshawn will sit for 20 minutes. He'll get a 5-minute break, and then another 20 minutes, and so on. So. And just kind of to talk about my process a little bit as I'm getting started. I like to start with a sort of orangey kind of reddish base. I feel like it's a good undertone to have most of the time in portraits.
And I know you do, you're not exclusively a portrait artist, but you do a lot of portrait art.
Right.
What do you think made you gravitate towards that?
I think it basically started from when I was younger and just wanting to draw people all the time. I'm not entirely sure. I think maybe, I realized that at a younger age that it was kind of a skill I had, I suppose, in some ways. And I just kind of kept doing it and kept wanting to get better at it and better at it. There are definitely times where I wish I was better at doing, still lives, or like if I try to do a plein air painting, oh my gosh, I don't know, that's a mess. But yeah, so I'm not sure.
Did you do a lot of self-portraits? Like, is that kind of where portraiture started for you, or no, you were more in doing portraits of others? And partly, I guess I kind of asked because hopefully we have a lot of would-be self-portrait artists that are tuning in. Mm-hmm. And, giving them a little bit of encouragement doesn't hurt.
Sure.
And I would also say, out of my kids at home, who I think because their dad works in an art museum have gravitated towards art to some degree, I do see that they do self-portraiture a lot. They're always, especially when they're in the ages that they are, where they're like between 10 and 15, and they're trying to figure out who they are and kind of self-define. I feel like for them, it can be really cathartic to do those self-portraits over and over again, you know, kind of defining themselves in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always kind of had a lack of interest in doing self-portraits, honestly. I'd rather paint other people or draw other people. I mainly did them, if I had to, for, you know, high school or for college, but I tend to not really do self-portraits that much. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe more so where it started for me, from what I can remember anyway, is like anime and manga.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I know that's how a lot of younger people kind of tend to start out, is through those types of things, and that's definitely what I did when I was a lot younger, doing those types of things. But yeah, and then I think it kind of just developed from there, and you know, in high school, I became super interested in old masters, that type of Renaissance work. So I tried everything I could to learn about it and emulate it, and I think that's kind of, you know, what brought me to this point where I'm really trying to study even harder the techniques of old masters and 19th century painters too.
Do you have any in particular right now that you feel like either an artist that you've really kind of recently turned on to, who you're more and more interested in, or ones that you've really just kind of, I don't want to say modeled after, but like ones that were influential to you?
Contemporary or not contemporary? That's the question.
Well, geez, let's start with not contemporary.
Okay. So.
Who got, like, when you talk about old masters, who was it that you were like, yeah, I like that, that's how I want to do things, or?
Well, when I was younger, it started out with the like OG old masters. So, so that was, you know, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Titian, those types of people. I gear away a little bit more from them. I think it's just because I had my time with them for a little bit, so I've moved on to some other people, but yeah, I think now more so, old masters, you know, maybe from 19th century is more so what I look at now. So John Singer Sargent, Waterhouse, trying to think of more. But yeah, I mean, lately I've just been loving Waterhouse. Like, I absolutely love Waterhouse. I don't really paint like him, but I think he is just a magnificent artist. So
That's one of the interesting things, and we'll probably get into this a little bit more, is that a lot of times you can be inspired by an artist that you might not necessarily want to emulate at all. But
sure.
It's something beyond the actual virtuosity of their work that draws you to.
definitely.
So one of the questions that has come in is what kind of surface are you currently painting on?
Oh, so I am painting on the same paper that we are giving out to people to do their self-portraits on. So it's just a It's 140-pound oil primed arches paper. And for myself, because of what I like to paint on and how I like to paint, I gessoed it 3 times over. It is primed so that you can work on it right away with oil if you want to, but it tends to have a little bit of sinking in, because I did try it with the first portrait unprimed by my own priming, and I just didn't like it very much, so I primed it on my own. So I definitely recommend that if you like a little bit more of a surface that doesn't sink in as much.
So if somebody is doing their portrait at home, they should, if they're working with oil, they should prime it?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that is kind of the best result, but again, everybody works differently, so if you prefer it a different way, go for it.
There you go. And I can say the reason why we chose this arches paper is because it does have a decent amount of flexibility. You don't necessarily have to do your portrait in paint. You certainly could do it as a sketch. You could use any number, whether it's wax or graphite. You can use your pencil, you can use a crayon, you can use any different type that you would like. And we feel like the arches paper is a pretty decent substrate for that.
Definitely. Arches paper is kind of known for being a pretty quality paper, so.
I'll let you go for a little while so you can
Okay.
get started. I won't be bugging you this whole time. So I'll give you a little bit of time, and for all of you at home, keep the questions coming, and we'll be able to chime in from time to time and ask Sonia these questions. Thank you.
So if anybody's wondering, I guess what I'm doing right now, it might look a little weird. Sometimes, not all the time, I work by comparative measurement. So I'm just like measuring basically, the top of his forehead down to his nose and down to his chin to put the face into 3 parts to make sure that I'm kind of aligning them properly, proportion-wise.
Sonia, we've had a number of really positive comments coming in. People really enjoying your work. I know that we're going to have a break in a little while. I wanted to, one of the questions that came in was about your favorite portrait artists. So we talked a little bit about influences, but I don't know whether the answers are similar, but who are some of your favorite portrait artists? And maybe, I don't know, do you want to talk about contemporary portrait artists and ones that you're looking at right now?
Sure. I think I would say I have a very set list for contemporary artists that I kind of follow and love. And one of the main people is Alex Venezia. I believe that's how you say his last name. I'm not sure. He is out of Raleigh, North Carolina. But he is a young artist. I think he's like around 25. And just beautiful, beautiful work. I definitely recommend checking him out on Instagram. Let me see. I'm trying to think of. Stephen Ballman. He mainly, more so, does drawings than anything, but he's really great to learn from. And I think one of the fundamentals of painting is learning how to draw. That really helps painting skills. And so I definitely look to him for drawing, and he has a Patreon that I subscribe to, which is really helpful. And then Amaya Gurpai, I believe that's how you say her last name. Hopefully I'm not butchering it. It's hard to know when you only know these people through Instagram. But she's a super talented artist who mainly also does drawings, but her work is just super unique because she mixes drawing with some gouache and watercolor, and she's always testing different types of surfaces, and it's really super interesting and innovative artist. Jordan Sokol is a big one for me. The way he applies paint is a huge inspiration, and just his surfaces are just beautiful. And I think that's about it that I can think of right now.
Sure. You mentioned Instagram as being kind of a way that you are able to connect with other artists or follow other artists. Is that a go-to for you to be able to connect in as kind of like a suggestion to anybody out there who's trying to explore what's out there in the contemporary art scene?
Yeah, definitely. That is where I find mostly everything. Instagram is huge for contemporary artists, and I don't think I would be able to find as many people if I were on Instagram.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everybody who's asking questions and for tuning in. And of course, once again, we've got to thank not only Sonia, who's doing all of the tough work here tonight, but also Coolest Coast for broadcasting the live stream. And of course, we wouldn't be doing it without the gifts of funds that came from Art Bridges. So thank you to everyone who's making this possible, including everybody out there. One of the questions that just came through are, can you describe some of the colors on the palette?
Sure.
What do you have?
I tend to work with a very limited palette because I don't like to get overwhelmed with color, and that tends to happen if you have too many things. Well, that's the timer, so Keyshawn, you can move around or do whatever if you need
Yeah, I didn't even thank Keyshawn, and he's got a sit there for 20 still moments. Thank you, Keyshawn, for coming out here and being our model today.
For sure. So, so I'll talk about my palette while he's taking that break. So right now, I basically sort of have what's called the Zorn palette, which is just white, yellow ochre. It was originally, I think, Venetian red, but I have a few different reds, and then a black. So really, really basic. Sometimes I'll add blue in there, which isn't a true Zorn palette. But I do, and it also kind of isn't true either, because I do have different types of reds and yellows and whites. So having that limited palette kind of keeps me from pulling from too many places right now. And maybe as the portrait develops, I might add more colors to the process, but I think keeping it simple in the beginning is super helpful.
Sounds good. Let's continue to talk about kind of the tools that you use, and your brushes. How did you, I know a lot of artists, it takes some experimentation to get with tools that you really begin to love and want to use, and can you talk a little bit about your brushes?
So the brushes that I have here right now are some pretty kind of basic Blick ones. They're Blick Master Stroke, like a hog bristle type brush. I like to kind of start out with that because they're less precise and kind of messy, and I try to refrain from being too precise in the beginning. So I like to start out with those, and then I'll kind of move on to more of a, this is an evergreen filbert from Rosemary & Co. Rosemary & Co. is a brush company out of the UK, and they're gaining a lot of popularity, but their brushes are like no other brushes I've ever used before. They're phenomenal. They're absolutely wonderful. They hold up, they hold their shape. They're just great. And then the other one I have out here right now is a treacle brush. This is the Sean Cheatham set, who's another artist, portrait artist that's absolutely amazing. He's another one to check out. And this is his set that he put together with treacle. The brushes are super nice, so I enjoy those too. And most of these brushes that I have here are the Sean Cheatham set and a set from Rosemary & Co. from when I was, I went to the FACE conference, which is the Figurative Art Convention and Expo, last year in Virginia. And this is the Josh LaRock set, who's another portrait artist that is pretty phenomenal to check out too.
You talked a little bit about contemporary artists, and you were just mentioning the FACE conference. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you have a lot of interaction with people all around the country. How do you feel about, we'll say, let's start off big with like Wisconsin arts, and then work our way down northeastern Wisconsin, mm-hmm. Our local Manitowoc County arts world. How does it compare? I know there are definitely parts of this country that have sparked up over the past 20 years or so, and really incredible arts communities have sprung up. And I know, Manitowoc is a small community, and so it's got a pretty small art community comparably. Mm-hmm. But can you talk about like Wisconsin arts and things that you've noticed that make it maybe unique, or what excites you about what's going on right now in the state?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, a lot of my practice came out of Milwaukee, but Milwaukee has a sort of different kind of tone as for the arts there than I kind of tend to go for. But I think there's a lot of really great artists coming out of Milwaukee, a lot of people that, you know, are celebrating diverse artists, which is really great. I think one of the like biggest gems in Wisconsin that I was so happy to find was I always get the Waukesha mixed up. Museum of Contemporary Art. It's WOMA. And they are primarily a figure painting, or like a figure centered museum, and they're relatively small, but every exhibition I've went to there is just beautiful and wonderful and like really phenomenal contemporary artists that are working with the figure and with portraiture and realism or naturalism. And to find something like that in Wisconsin was just pretty amazing to me, because generally a lot of the artists that I follow and that I tend to gravitate towards are based in, you know, LA or New York, other places, that bigger cities that have, you know, ateliers and things like that. But yeah, I think, you know, and I think Wisconsin has a sort of like a sort of charm to it, especially with plein air painters. There's such a great, I guess, group or collective of people that really appreciate plein air painting here, and it's understandable because of our, you know, especially Door County.
The coastline, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think that's really inspiring for me, even though I'm not really a plein air painter. I always want to be, but I also don't really like painting outside, so.
It's an entirely different endeavor, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't think that any of these portraits, certainly as we get through November and into December, we won't be doing any of these outside. That's for sure. We're going to stick inside for these.
Definitely.
Well, I can let you guys get back to it a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you to everybody who's submitted comments or questions, and keep them coming. And we'll let Sonia back at it.
All right, I'm going to start the timer again. Find the spot that you were looking at last time, if you remember. All right, another 20 minutes we go. So kind of explaining a little bit now to what I'm doing. Just trying to just block in the light and dark shapes and making it really kind of basic for myself. Not getting wrapped up in details, not even really color. I mean, I try to stay within the tone of things, but you'll go over, I mean, I go over it anyways. So taking these kind of light shapes and just making sure that I get those in.
right. We've got a little bit more time to go. I want to thank again everyone who's tuning in for this live stream. This is, for those of you who weren't here at the beginning when we introed, part of the Rahr West Art Museum's Manitowoc Community Portrait Project. And this is a project developed kind of in celebration of the 150th anniversary of the city of Manitowoc to get kind of a snapshot, a portrait of who we are as a city, as a community today. And I want to thank our artist who's helping us out throughout the entire project, not just on this live stream, but throughout the entire project, Sonia Vasquez. And I'd also like to send a thank you to Coolest Coast for broadcasting this live stream, doing all the work that they do to set this up and give us all the camera angles. There's no way we would be able to put this on. So we're very thankful for their help during this. And this project is funded by the Art Bridges Foundation. We want to thank them for their contributions to be able to allow us at the Rahr West Art Museum the opportunity to reach out to you, since we can't have you come here. And before I ask a few closing questions, I did want to mention that this project, this community portrait project, includes you out there. I had mentioned you can't come inside the Rahr West right now, but what you can do is participate in this project by stopping by the Rahr West. We have an outdoor box that is filled with kits for you to bring home. And they're very basic. They'll give you a background on the portrait, the community portrait project. They'll also give you one of these cards. And this is your art card. You, on one side of the card, are invited to create a self-portrait. This gives you the ability to do any variety of types of self-portrait, if it's just pencil, if it's ink, if it's wax or crayon, if it's paint, anything at all. And a wide variety of abilities. You know, there are a lot of people out there who say, I can't even draw a stick figure. One of the things we want to normalize at the Rahr West Art Museum is creativity. Creativity is a normal thing. Creativity is something that's human for all of us. And, you know, we want you to experiment. And if you don't think of yourself as creative, maybe you don't start out in this card, maybe you start out with a little bit of paper on the side. But be creative. And don't worry about necessarily the finished product. A huge part of being creative is the actual experience itself. We want you to participate. We want you to be able to contribute to this large community project. And the other portion of participating in the community project is on the back of the card. We want you to answer the following question. We want you to answer the question, how do you feel about your identity in relation to Manitowoc? How do you feel about your identity in relation to Manitowoc? And feel free to use the whole card to fill out that, because it's a complex answer. And we hope that you participate. You're going to also have directions to return the card to us. And when we gather these cards in early of 2021, we have planned to put together a large exhibit that will feature these. Each one of your cards, as well as some of the artwork that's created by Sonia. Now, what you've seen over the last 50 minutes probably is a little intimidating to you as to what you might be able to do. But even the work that Sonia does here, she's going to bring home and continue afterwards. 2 weeks ago, you worked with Dina, right, and created a portrait. Has that been completed at this point in time? That was one of the questions we had.
Not yet, no.
So it takes a long time for even Sonia, as our kind of like star artist of this project, to be able to work on this. So again, I encourage you, don't be afraid to be creative, and don't be afraid to experiment, and understand that it takes hard work to be able to do something artistic. It's not just either innate or not innate. with that said, one of the other questions that I had for you is maybe not that much of an art question. We talked about artists who inspire you, contemporary artists. What kind of artists kind of got you involved in doing portrait art? But I guess one of the questions I wanted to mention before we close up is who inspires you outside of the art world? And I know it's a loaded and tough question when, it seems like anytime somebody is put up on a pedestal, it's easy to knock them back down because everybody's human. But who are the people right now that inspire you?
Oh boy. I think, a lot of what I do in my art practice blends into the other things that I do outside and vice versa. So I have to say, activists, honestly, some politicians. I'm very, inspired by. And I think, seeing not only other artists but other activists use art or encourage art to further whatever mission that they're trying to discuss or trying to highlight in the world. So I think one of the main inspirations that I tend to get is from the group that I'm in, the people that I'm around, because they are basically like a support group, but also an activist group. And my group, or the organization that I'm talking about, is Love, here in Manitowoc. And I think they inspire me a lot because, like I said, it's a support system. It makes you feel like you're not so alone in the type of things that you think about or the progress that you want to see in the world when you know that other people are behind you and with you on those things. Also, I think a big thing is my family, and maybe that sounds a little cliche and cheesy, but my family has been super supportive and of my practice, but also
including sitting for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And also inspirational in that, all my siblings have different things that we're good at. We always talk about kind of how different we are and how it's very weird, but we all have different skill sets that really make us who we are. And, my mom has always had a super hard work ethic, and I think that translates a lot into my work, both this type of work and other type of work. And my dad is an immigrant, so I attribute a lot of what I do in my activism and art activism to him, because growing up you see the differences between how people are to my dad versus how people are to even like my mom. So you can take a break, sure. Or we might be done after this. But yeah, so I think mainly the people around me right now are really who are inspiring me. My fiance as well, super supportive. And I don't know, I'm trying to think of other people without getting too political.
Well, I would say, one of the great gifts that art gives to communities, and certainly when that there are a group of people who are like-minded and focused on improvements in their community, or trying to make sure that people aren't forgotten, or people are connected with one another or with a greater group.
Mm-hmm.
For most of us, it's a hard thing to kind of like express.
Right.
And when artists come into the picture, they can coalesce that whole idea into something that is transcendent and into something that's permanent, whether it's murals or public art, whether it's something that's temporary but memorable in the way that you are expressing in a physical or visual sense what everyone has inside them but don't necessarily have the wherewithal to get out.
And that's one of the, and we've seen that coast to coast, how important that is, especially this year, in a way to help everyone who is under so much stress be able to find that expression of something that they really couldn't figure out themselves. Art has done a wonderful job of providing that expression.
Yeah, and like you were talking about earlier, with people thinking, like, oh, I can't draw a stick figure, the common saying sort of thing about making artwork. The thing that I always tend to think about is, like, if you watch kids, for example, like, it's just innate in them. Like, they don't care. They just create. And you can give them a pen and a paper and, they're off to the races. You hand a pen and a paper and tell an adult to draw something and they're like, and I think, trying to just take some of that energy from younger kids that they have and just going for it. I think, art and fear is a huge thing. Even for myself, sometimes I'm like, oh no, like I have this new sketchbook or this new paint and I don't want to like waste this new paint, but like paint is only wasted if it sits in the tube, So I really encourage everybody to, it doesn't have to be a masterpiece all the time. Everybody's learning, and I just encourage everybody to do it, even if it's just for yourself, if it's not for anything else. I think it's a super good stress relief. I've been trying to draw a lot during this week, so.
Yeah, yeah. I think we are close to the end of our time. I'll leave that as the last word.
Okay.
And just thank you to everyone who tuned in, asked questions, made comments. This will definitely be up on the Rahr West site. For anybody who missed the beginning, you can take a look and see how the whole process went and some of the other questions. Again, we want you to participate. Stop by the Rahr West, grab your own kit that allows you to participate in the community portrait project. And again, thanks to our friends at Coolest Coast for hosting, and thank you to Art Bridges for the funding, and of course thank you to our wonderful artist. Hopefully she didn't intimidate you that much. You can also do this too, and thank you very much to our model this evening. And we'll be back again in next Saturday, I think it is, a week from tomorrow. We'll have information online for you. But we will be continuing this series with some more live streaming of portrait painting. We also have a lot of other live streams coming down the pike for the Rahr West. So tune into the Rahr West Facebook page for more information. Thanks, everyone.